Oh, we're in this new space because unfortunately we had too many people in our Airbnb. Yeah, we probably didn't take seriously enough like the exact number of people that were supposed to be there, and we kind of ballooned. And I don't think that the owner of the house.
She got sick. Yeah, so she hasn't seen her very much.
God has answered. It is an uncommon name.
How does it feel on your body?
Terrible. I feel like I'm carrying sacks of potato on every limb.
My story always starts with this belief that I had something to prove. Almost like I was living my life like I had a debt to pay off. And from a very young age, all of my movements were very calculated and intentional based off of how they would be perceived by my family, my friends, the men in my life, and then also God in a really big way. But the thing is, when you move in perfectionism, you start moving in anxiety, because in perfectionism, there is no effort that will ever be enough. And so you can get incredibly anxious for normal mundane things to like really stressful situations, but anxiety is kind of always underlying every situation. Also, moving in perfectionism led me to disordered eating habits. It led me to lots of hiding in shame from the people in my life out of fear that they would see the real me. And then also my perfectionism and this desire to feel known, worthy, deserving of good things led me to hop from relationship to relationship with guys and with men, because that for me spoke validation and value. That for me spoke that what I was trying to earn and prove in my life, their affections and that affirmation was proving that I was now enough and worthy of somebody's love. And so I actually would also in those relationships give of my body physically, because then it even spoke more loudly to me, like, you need to earn this from someone else and this is what they want from you. And as they returned that affection, I felt affirmed, and it was it felt like a very desperate need for it. So I thought, this is exactly how I need to get it. But the thing is that it's not what I was created for. And when you're living and moving, doing things that you weren't created for, it was only increasing my anxiety. And the lies that I was believing were they were deepened and they were growing deeper roots, it felt like. And so I was leaving all those interactions more empty, more anxious, and then on top of that, feeling shame, because it's so easy to feel shame when you're a perfectionist. And so I used that to self-medicate. My pain, anything I experienced at home, divorce with my parents, all the moments where I was trying so hard to prove, where I had to hide if I didn't do well with something or it wasn't perfect, I was using those moments to self-medicate. And so moving in that way made me do things that were anti-love. In the same way that I had been walking out these lies because I need to earn and prove that I am desirable, worthy, valuable, beautiful, I have to do things to garner that kind of attention. I sought ways to make myself feel better when I had lost everything I'd placed my identity in. And so it led me to doing something very anti-love, and I ended up cheating on my husband and hurt him deeply, of course. And then I got hit with the immense amount of pain and shame and guilt over what I had done, because almost my entire life, it felt I had been living for and moving in perfection. And all of that was about to come completely crashing down on me, as everyone was going to start seeing me as Joyce, the cheater. Like, there's no hiding when you do that. That information gets around very quickly. And Joyce, the cheater, like, I could not deal with that thought. Like, everything I had built, everything I had hid was about to disappear, and I would have nothing to hold on to. And I had already lost so much at that point. So all these questions of, what do you do if your husband leaves you, if he never, well, he had already left, but what do you do if he never comes back? What does that mean for you? Will you always be damaged? Will you always be this broken woman? Who's gonna want you now? Just all of these questions, just completely based in shame and guilt. And I didn't see a way out of it. It was really dark and really sad. And I had lots of anxiety during that time. And so I was just ready to go ahead and just identify myself with my sin for the rest of my life. I am a cheater. This is what I've done. Once a cheater, always a cheater. This is just who I am. And let me just from this point forward try to prove to my husband that I'll never do this again. Try to prove to the world that I'll never do this again. And just live in that. Just feel that shame and guilt and ask and beg for forgiveness from everyone involved, including God, for the rest of my life every single day.
Wow.
And as I'm sitting in these moments of deep and dark despair, two friends reached out to me, Jayla and Eddie. Where's Eddie at? And what's crazy is that I didn't tell them what had happened. The Holy Spirit had told them something's wrong, check on Joyce. And they reached out to me. I remember I was sitting on my couch, all the lights were off in the house. My husband had left, so it was just me. And they had asked me, like, how are you feeling? What's going on? I immediately launched into, like, I'm the worst type of person. You know, I'm a cheater. I'm a sinner. I'm asking for, begging for forgiveness every single day. I don't know what to do. Everything is falling apart. And they just started speaking life over me, and starting with, first with my identity as daughter before anything else. And just helping me understand that there were some very important things that were true about me that I needed to know before moving forward. Like, it's like they couldn't let me leave that conversation without telling me these things and speaking these things over my life. So from that conversation, I started to learn some things that started to transform the way that I thought about myself and what I thought about how God saw me and what that meant for my future moving forward. So one of those things was that I was forgiven without having to earn it or prove it. Another one was that I was free from sin. So this fear, this idea that I was once a cheater, always a cheater, is just not true. That I was given a new heart, and that I could trust that new heart because that new heart was the heart of Christ. And that new heart only wanted good things and only moved in love. I started to believe that I had been made whole and well, and that I actually was already perfected in love. So this search and this chasing for perfection, there was no point to that. Like, I already had everything I needed and lacked no good thing because I had Jesus. And so just moving from, first of all, I didn't really understand it. In those moments when I first heard it, it was all very new to me. Very opposite to what I thought the rest of my life was going to look like, but I really wanted to believe it because it sounded incredible. And so I just started to speak those things over myself, and, you know, reading Romans 6 and 7 and 8, and just as much as I could about what the truth was about me and how my Father saw me, again, as first and foremost a daughter.
What has been beautiful to see is that her testimony, Joyce's testimony, has reached so many other people.
Yeah.
And they can then see the evidence of her life.
Right. Yeah.
And because it's been written in the Word, and she believed the Word. But then here's the evidence of her walked out life.
Really.
So,
Which
That's really good.
I just want to emphasize really quick, just kind of the supernatural thing that's happening right now, and that's so against the world, right? Is that Joyce is sitting here without shame, without condemnation, without guilt, talking about her story, sitting next to her new husband, right? And he has no fear, no question in the back of his mind. And just look like
It's crazy.
that's supernatural.
Yeah.
And how dead old Joyce is. Right?
Oh
It's
yeah,
so
'cause
beautiful.
that woman that cheated, that she did.
yeah.
She's so dead. And you can just talk about it so easily and plainly because you're talking about a dead person.
Yeah, you got married to that in Utah.
Yeah?
That was a dope wedding too.
For sure. No, like,
that we're free from sin, and we hear it and it's like, oh, this is so crazy. And if we're not believing it, and if we're not experiencing it, the thing that's in the way is the lie. And so much of the time where someone hears this message, they hear wave one, they go through the whole thing, and they're just like, why don't I have this thing? And when we sit down and say, well, what is the thing that's keeping you from believing this? And so much of it found out in wave 2, like healing or marks that have been put on us or the mistakes that we've made. And when we realize what that thing is, and the Holy Spirit comes and says, yo, this is what it is that's keeping you from seeing yourself the way your Father has always seen you. That truth is revealed, and then we see it for what it actually is, a lie from the enemy of your soul.
Yeah, because what was that feeling when it got revealed?
Oh, it was amazing. Well, it felt like that was exactly what I needed to be able to move forward in confidence. It was knowing what the lie was. It was like, because the truth has so much more impact when you know what the lie is. Because I had heard the truth my whole life, honestly. Like, I had read those verses before. I was the daughter of a pastor, so I had heard those things before, but I did not know what my lies were. So it was almost like until I knew what was motivating my movements, like through whether it was perfectionism or garnering some kind of affection, I couldn't then say like, oh, that's the opposite of who I actually am. That's the opposite of my identity as a daughter. It's the opposite of what God has created me for. So yeah, that once I knew that, I literally was like, oh, that's it, I'm good now. Like, honestly, like, it was then that I fully believed I'm free from sin.
Oh,
was when I confessed the lie. Yeah, because before that I was still not sure I might cheat again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so then it's like I wasn't sure that I was fully capable, because honestly, I had cheated a lot of times in my life. It wasn't the first time. I cheated in almost every relationship I had. I had to have someone else lined up before moving, because that space in between would have spoken loudly to me, you are not enough.
Dang, so this is even crazier because of how silent in the space.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What about you? Does that resonate as far as like hearing in that moment the lie?
And well, I didn't get it because the word was pride, and pride said, "No, you don't." No. And so I think I literally said it with a question mark. Like, he was like, "What word?" Because he knew, like, he was like, "Well, where did you get?" And I was like, "Pride." Like, make sense of that for me. And then once he identified these areas where pride had such a stronghold, then it was that moment of like, oh my gosh, get rid of this. Yeah, like, it was like, I don't want to do it anymore. Like, now I know, and I can see what it's like without it already, because I can already see what it's done here, obviously, but I see what it's done here, because I was incapable of, number one, wanting a relationship with God or believing any of what the Bible said because of pride. And so as soon as that was gone, it was like, we are good. Let's do the rest of it. Like, I was so sad, like, very relatable. Just being like, yeah, no, I think we're pretty much good here.
When Will and I actually reconnected after like 8 years of no communication, the longest, I guess we weren't speaking as I was up on stage, but literally the longest, the most interaction we had was like here in Portland, and was him listening to my testimony. So it was like the first new memory that Will is creating is hearing my testimony and not feeling, like you said, afraid at all, as Holy Spirit is telling him, you know, to be still, but Joyce is awesome. He's like, there's no part of him that's like, oh, like, let me be careful with this girl because she has a past and she has a history. He's like, I don't even know that girl. Like, she doesn't even go here. Like,
Here's a hard question.
Go here.
So old Joyce is gone, new creation, but old Joyce hurt people.
yes, she did.
How do you now relate to the aftermath of your newness in light of your old actions, and how some of those wounds and hurts have either remained or have had very serious consequences for loved ones?